Hello and welcome to this eCampus News webcast. My name's Andrew Barber. I'm a senior contributing editor here at eCampus News, and I'll be the moderator for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Iterable. And over the next hour, we're going to take a look at how college marketers can spur growth in two key areas, student enrollment and alumni donations. And in particular, we're going to take a look at how legacy marketing systems are giving way to more agile and integrated omni-channel platforms that actually use behavior-based personalization to transform how colleges connect with their audiences. And before I introduce our speaker today, let me just take a few moments to highlight a couple of things about the console that you're looking at today. First, we are going to be recording the event, and in a couple of days, we'll send out an email to everyone who is on the call that will contain a link to the recorded event. And you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from that same email. And second, please ask questions. And don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any point during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into that Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. And I hope we'll have probably around 15 or 20 minutes or so at the end when our speaker can answer your questions. We also have a chat function which can be launched via, if you look down at the bottom of your screen at the blue group chat icon down there, and use Talk Chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eCampus News team if you have technical issues or you want to discuss the issues further among yourselves. But I do have one favor to ask. Please don't use the chat function to ask our panelist questions. She's simply not going to have time to monitor the chats during her presentation. So if you have a question for her, again, please use the Q&A panel instead. And with that out of the way, let me introduce you to today's speaker. Stephanie Robotham is Chief Marketing Officer at Iterable. And in that role, Stephanie works with some of the most iconic B2C brands to help evolve their growth marketing strategies. And she also has extensive B2B experience, having worked previously at Salesforce and Optimizely. Welcome, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Thank you for the intro. A little bit about Iterable. Iterable, as Andrew said, we're a growth marketing platform that allows teams like yours to build really relevant, rewarding relationships with your audience. So keep that in mind. That's what we're going to sort of focus on today, is that common goal that we all share. So I think whatever industry you're in, modern growth marketing teams and leaders and your leaders all share one really strategic goal, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. We're striving to create rewarding relationships with our audiences. So we all know we have to stand out from our competitors. We have to tell a better story, create more meaning, and really delight our audiences better than our peers. We're always trying to do better than our peers to stand out. So we own that funnel. We orchestrate our customers' journey. We deliver the metrics that fuel this real sustainable growth. And honestly, creativity is what makes us unique. And when we speak for, our organization, our company, and our university, so keep in mind as marketers that creative element as well. I think we've got very, very data focused over the years. So we like to keep that creativity in mind. If you think back to what probably drew you to your marketing career, I know it did for me and many members of the team here, it's probably because you appreciate the science of execution. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing that sort of really powerful campaign go out and seeing it executed and going through. The parts of nuancing in messaging, and obviously I was at Optimizely, I spent a lot of time understanding the nuances of messaging and the phenomenal impact that could have, A versus B. So that nuance in our messaging is so, so critical, and I think what we all actually enjoy thinking through those things. And then lastly, back to the creativity piece, but it's the sort of magic of storytelling and that amazing creative talent you get to work with. So, what we want to sort of embrace is that, but what we're all really trying to do is to create rewarding relationships with our audiences, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let me set the level set for a second on 2 or 3 things. I talked to kind of our customers who are in the education realm and prep for this. And then we looked at some, obviously some data sources out there to really get an even better understanding of the sort of world that we all live in the education sphere. So you guys as education marketing teams, you're in an increasingly competitive market. I know you feel that. So there's nearly 5,000 2- to 4-year higher education institutions. It gives students a huge number of options, and that's growing every year. So institutions that are going to stand out are the ones that strive to build these meaningful relationships that we talked about a little while ago. And if you don't stand out, it's easy to brush you aside. And before you even get to the point of starting that journey and starting to build that relationship, don't get swept aside. So standing out in a plethora of choices. The second thing I want to just quickly talk about is there's a rising tide of credible alternatives. So it's not just taxi services and food delivery services that are being disrupted. Software is eating the world, quoting Mark Andreessen, a very famous VC here in the Valley. So it's not just Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash that are doing the disrupting. So in your industry, more traditional establishments are being sort of upended and disrupted by boot camps, incubator programs, and a growing number of edtech resources are gaining momentum and catching the eye of a broadening student population. A healthy market indicates the old way of approaching education might not be as resonant as it historically has been. And, I think you can see signs, you probably all feel signs that you're actually already being disrupted. And the last point here is that EdTech Global say there's a $252 billion market. And that kind of opportunity is going to attract disruptors, entrepreneurs, technologists with entirely new models. And, that market size is definitely worth fighting for and definitely worth investing in. So I think, you can expect to see more and more disruption from those types of people. So let's switch focus for a minute from the student side of things to the alumni side of things. So let's look at the potential here. I'm assuming for most of you, this is a really critical revenue stream for your institution. Interestingly, culturally, it's certainly very different in different countries. So in the UK, where I'm from, this would be a really odd thing to ask for an alumni donation, other than if we were trying to repair the roof of the gym or, build a new theatre. But asking consistently for these donations is definitely a cultural thing. But it's a cultural thing that Coutts estimate to be worth $13.5 billion. So they estimate Coutts is the private wealth management subsidiary of the Royal Bank of Scotland. And they said in 2016, alums donated $13.5 billion to their alma mater. So let that sink in for a second. So the first part of this opportunity is that $13.5 billion is way too important to pass up. I'm sure we can all agree on that. The second part of this equation, and what makes this opportunity so massive, is that Blackboard, a cloud provider of non-profit software, estimate that this $13 billion comes from 9% of the alumni population. So 81% of the alumni population are not currently donating. Now, that's what I call an opportunity. So ask yourselves, from an alumni perspective, if your alumni outreach was even slightly more resonant and you took time to build just slightly more meaningful relationships, what would that mean for you? What would that mean for your organization? I think the answer would be equals massive opportunity. So think that one through. Okay, so we've sized the opportunity on both sides of your business, attracting students on the first hand, and then once they leave, brilliantly educated, turning them into really engaged alums. Now, this isn't going to be easy. If it was, everybody would be doing it, but it's totally possible. And I think neither educators or most B2C brands have actually perfected the approach, but many are really getting there. And the more and more we see with our customers across a whole plethora of industries, not just in education, they're having some remarkable transformations. So now the why. So why do we have to do this? Surely the things we've been doing have worked perfectly well in the past. Not anymore. So customers' expectations have really changed significantly in the last 5 years. And as their technology evolves, so do their expectations. Think about how you live yourself. We engage, interact, formulate decisions totally differently because of the technology, the media, and how sort of open we are with our peer networks and social networks. We communicate in ways that wouldn't have even been possible a decade ago. And what's worked previously, you can be pretty sure it won't work going forward into the future. What we see with most of our really successful customers is that they keep moving, they keep experimenting. So that's one thing. But what I just described to you is this is what you will see referred to over and over as this now economy. So stepping outside education just for a second, we see across, as I said, our customer base, people who are embracing this now economy, they're thriving. And those who haven't, because maybe, their infrastructure or their sort of, team makeup or where they're focused or the goals they're trying to achieve are not sort of designed to point them in this direction, are not thriving. So more on that in a little while. I'll show you some really good customer examples. So the only time that actually matters to people is now. Our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. We're turning into goldfish, evolution-wise, and our expectations are getting higher, as I pointed out. I know mine are. Think about how you live day to day. So I live in San Francisco. If I wait 5 minutes for an Uber or a Lyft, it makes me wonder what on earth is going on in the city. If I wait 45 minutes for a freshly cooked organic meal to be delivered, it's a long time to wait. We expect same-day delivery on thousands of items. We want news as it's happening. And we want our vendors and our people we buy from to read all our digital body language and respond appropriately. Most consumers in the age groups we're targeting know that is entirely possible. So that's what they now expect. But if you're anything like me, sadly, you're still inundated with messages that are not at all relevant. My January tradition, I spent some time over the holidays purging my inbox. And I know actually it was spurred on because I never dreamed I would get a notification from Gmail saying I needed more space for email, but it happened. So I was thinking about the presentation and talking about the brands that send me really relevant messages. And as I went through and delete, unsubscribe, there were very few doing a good job. Honestly, very, very few. So I'm sure you don't have to think too long and hard to come up with a brand that either did a horrible job trying to sell to you or did an amazing job trying to sell to you. One happened to me this morning. I made a purchase and a few minutes later in my inbox there was a badly timed email offering me a discount if I made a purchase. So that hasn't turned out to be a great experience. Actually, and I'm not alone, 94% of consumers have discontinued a relationship with a brand because of these bad, irrelevant interactions. And that's a big number. If you apply that to the students who initially come and express some sort of interest to you, or the donors who initially sort of come to you and say, hey, well, show you that they may be willing to do some sort of donation, and you then lose 94% of them because you send irrelevant emails or SMS or text or whatever, that's a lot of time and energy you're going to spend to get those people back. And, it's a big risk, and leaders of marketing teams manage risk. And anywhere you would see that 94% of people would leave because your messaging was irrelevant, that sort of shows a big risk and a big expense. So the other thing, just to add some more complexity to our world, to your world, your students and your alums want you to deliver relevance across multiple channels. You guys have to think of Gen Z, or Z, as I would say. You need to think about how you interact on mobile, how you interact socially, how you deliver your emails, how personalized your emails are, but across multiple channels. Are you thinking about Facebook targeting? Are you thinking about Instagram audiences? You have to think across multiple channels. Business Insider actually just did a study, and they suggested 10 channels is where Gen Z want to be communicated with. Now, that's a challenge, 10 channels, and trying to make that relevant and consistent and rewarding across 10 channels, that's a challenge, but we're up for it, right? So how do you think we're doing? As a community of marketing professionals, how do you think we're doing? Well, Accenture says we're not doing great. So Accenture says that 80% of consumers think we're broken, think it's broken. When they asked, 80% of consumers said they have a really fragmented experience as they move from device to device, channel to channel, for most brands they engage with. And we absolutely don't want that to be your brands when you have, you know, from a student perspective, a short window to really capture them and build that relationship. You don't want to be that where they get a total different personality and feel for your institution versus when they look at it on a mobile phone or they look in their Facebook feed. They don't want those separate broken messages. So this is super important. Another area where you can lose a ton of the goodwill and good work that you've done. Okay, so let's now look at what this could mean for education and if you get it right. So what's the upside if you get this right? From a student acquisition perspective, let's look at it on both sides. I think a lot of these are very obvious, but by getting it right, by building this relationship, this meaningful relationship, you're going to increase your credibility. You're going to be way more attractive to potential students, especially this generation we're all trying to figure out how to market to. You're going to make a meaningful impact on your core metrics, whatever they may be. I'm imagining it's enrollment numbers, it's conversion from enrollment to, from initial interest to actual enrollment. So you're going to have an impact on your core metrics, which, if you're anything like me, that's really what matters as you come to the end of the year. You want to look at your core metrics and you want to know that what you did and how you spent your time and where you poured your passion and energy into actually moved the needle and made a difference on things that your company and your institution is measuring you on. And then you're going to start to establish a reputation as the best institution, start to get recognized, who knows, in PR and press and all the other things that, again, can help you fill the top of your student funnel. So let's look at it from a champion of the alumni community. Your alumni are going to be more engaged, more informed, stronger ties within the peer group, and we see that a lot as something really, really important, that alumni peer group driving more and more engagement. And at the end of the day, you're going to increase the number of donors, and the amount of donations they're giving to you. So I think on this slide, honestly, you could put in your metrics and you could put in where you're measured, and you could probably take it from there and see how building these really super meaningful relationships right off the bat would start to really give you a really, really good ROI. So in summary, we're going to talk a little bit now about the how. How do we actually do this? How do we actually create omni-channel relevance? So how do we create these meaningful relationships across channels? We know that inconsistent experiences are leading to dismissive customers who'll look elsewhere. They'll dismiss you and they'll move on. And what we've learned from our customers and community is that growth marketers see success when they cut through the noise and they're relevant. They reach them on the device of their choice, and they do it in the most efficient, way possible, and they have all the data they collect on their subscribers. So I've been in marketing a few years now. I think I've spent most of my career collecting vast sources of data. Now with modern marketing technology, you can use it, and you can build this digital body language, this digital footprint of the people you're trying to build relationships, and really leverage it. So what I want to quickly do, we hear omni-channel a lot. What I just want to talk to you about true omni-channel. So as we go forward, you'll understand what I'm referencing. It's all the channels. So truly, it's email, mobile, social, web, direct mail. Even direct mail, it's so out of fashion, it's back in fashion. It's like Ugg boots, my friends tell me. And then you have to make it personal. You have to make it relevant. Okay, so again, I said at the beginning, I am so blessed that I get to talk to some of these incredible brands and really interact with their marketing leaders as they grow and grow and grow, and how, stuff they're doing, just as sort of, the head of marketing at Zillow is doing such creative things. Creative Live, I'll tell you a little bit about them in a little while. Teachable, tons in your sphere and not in your sphere. But companies large and small across all industries are adopting this approach in their growth marketing strategies. And if you do some research after this and just say, well, is she right? Do some research and you'll see that this is where the world is going. It's actually pretty unanimous consensus, and when I talk to customers, and this is how you break through, and the results sort of speak for themselves. I can pull out a few. Zillow increased their open rates by 161% just by really focusing on this omni-channel approach and being relevant, being highly personalized, and using all sorts of fantastic creative energy to get people to open their emails. 161%, imagine that. And then companies like Creative Live, Roxbox, Live Career, they've grown their lifetime open rates by over 20%. So imagine if you applied that to your business. So Creative Live is a great customer of Iterables and doing some really creative things. And actually a lot of what are sort of the who's and how's and why's and the tips for you to take away, a lot of it actually comes from spending some time with their VP of marketing, who is an incredible creative marketer. So off the bat, they've reduced the time it takes them to do email setup and testing by 50%. Flip that around, that means they can double the amount of sort of email segmentation testing that they can do. So their teams, at Creative Live, you probably know them, they're an online classroom for creative entrepreneurs. But by following some of these 4 steps, they automated their behavior-based outreach series. They got their data into a centralized place for all the teams to access. They gained a ton of agility, like in how they're doing acquisition, how they're doing maintenance, how they're doing testing, how they're doing triggers for welcome, re-engagement, upsell campaigns. So they're laser focused, targeting out blast campaigns and workflows for automated campaigns using individual behaviors. So every email they send is individualized, not just personalized, and we'll go into some more of that. And they started to really unlock the relevance we spoke about. We're looking forward to seeing more and more of their results. And actually, there's a webinar coming up in a week or so with Creative Live. So you can sign up on the Iterables site, but they have some fantastic insights into, how this approach has really changed the way they do things. Okay, so I'm a great fan of keeping it simple as you get it started. So this is now the how. So it's really easy to lose line of sight in our own hectic day-to-day. And we all live that life of hectic. So with clients large and small across all industries, they pretty much have unanimous consensus on 4 critical things you must start to do to achieve omni-channel relevance and to build these meaningful relationships. And, so we're going to go through those 4 hows. So they're the 4 things I'd really like you to take away from the presentation. So the first one is eliminating your data silos. You can see there that the average company invests in 16 separate marketing technology platforms. 16. So already that's probably 16 silos of data. And I'm sure there's others, points of collection. So many marketing teams are actually unable at this point to personalize messages, offers, because their view of the customer is limited. Since the data scatters across the enterprise, so silos create real meaningful latency. So you can respond quickly enough to satisfy, you can't respond quickly enough to satisfy the customer because the necessary data isn't available when you need it. So in this world, that's largely in real time. So using multiple marketing tools is very common. I'm not advocating to say pick one and stick with it. But what I am saying is we have to sort of break down and start to break down these silos and focus on our data. So that is the core thing here, not the systems from which it's contained. So when you lose sight of how your audience is engaging with your messaging across different channels, teams, campaigns, you lose sight of the individual. So silos impede your ability to read what they're telling you through their digital body language. What are they reviewing on the site? What emails are they responding to? What SMSs do they respond to? Everything they're telling you when you're talking to them in that sort of conversation you're trying to build. So you have to get your data out of the silos. So you have to access it, and you need to be able to do some really powerful segmentation. That's the key to this one. So key to personalization is customer data, and the enormous proliferation of these digital channels and corresponding data has led to, some serious silo building. And I'm sure if you think through your organization how many data sources and where it sits and how accessible it is and what kind of joins and crazy queries you need to run to actually pull meaningful data. I think everybody has these data silos, and it's time to sort of embrace it and look at it and start smashing them. Okay, the second unanimous point is to spend time really thinking through your segmentation. So if you can build more time and you can free your marketing team, you can spend more time thinking through segmentation. So if you think about it and you do really broad audience segmentation, what you're actually doing is delivering a really generic experience, which isn't going to help you build a meaningful relationship or relevance. So your tools should allow you to do very sophisticated, dynamic, real-time segmentation. And, really now you shouldn't need to call on engineers for help. If you're trapped with a legacy solution, it's really time to think about upgrading. The technology has moved on so far. A lot of our customers sort of say, being on legacy systems that didn't enable them to do really powerful segmentation without begging for engineering time, they lose their competitive advantage. And for some, it's, lights out. So, make sure you don't take your eye off this. If you don't be stuck with legacy technology that won't let you dynamically segment, it's one of the critical things. If it's broad, your segmentation is broad, you're limited to the amount of personalization you can do. And you have to go beyond high step and, basics. People see straight through that now. You have to go beyond that. So segment dynamically. So we all know, you've known for years that static content is the enemy of growth. So you have to adopt this dynamic approach. You have to segment dynamically. Okay, third, actually Forrester just launched a really, really good white paper on this. So individualization is the new personalization. So they're advocating this year that people push it even further than just personalizing. Strive to individualize what you're doing. So let's look at this from a sort of alumni donation perspective. So think about how you would feel about the audacity of your school asking you for money when their outreach is completely generic, not tailored at all to you or your relationship with your, college. And think about that, what that feeling emotes. Not great. So think about the flip side. Show me you know me. Reconfirm my last activity. Thank me for my last donation. There's what have I done on the website recently? There's tons of opportunities to make this individual, as long as you do the first two things we talked about. Without those two, this is going to be tricky. But, just imagine walking your customer's shoes is always something I try to keep in mind. And imagine if someone just says, dear first name, please donate. I think your response rate in this alone would be transformative if you can get this right. So last one, I could do a whole webinar about freeing your marketers, but free your marketers to do what they're passionate about. They want to think about the messaging. They want to think about the audience. They want to think about design, strategy, be creative, drive experiments. So free them to do that. So we've done some interviews actually of a variety of CMOs in our network, not necessarily all customers, but in our networks. And growth marketing teams now spend 90% of their time on technology, segmentation, SQL queries, bugs, features, implementation, vendor interactions, dealing with engineering teams, trying to allocate resources. So I wonder for you, if it's, you guys, it's 90-10 or it's 80-20, but I'm sure, if you flipped it over and freed your marketers for having to do all that, you would have a sort of meaningful impact. And that's back to sort of legacy systems and why you should really, really take some time to check out what else is out there. So the other point here is brand building, creative marketing, really, as we said, that sort of joy in that execution and seeing the results, that's what gets your marketing teams, and I'm sure you, excited about, your day-to-day and going to work every day. So don't let that play second fiddle to school management, data wrangling between channels, SQL queries that, I don't know about you, but doesn't fill me with joy every morning. Anyway, so free your marketers, I think, is the takeaway from this. Really look at your technology and really look at the amount of time they're spending on logistics and queries and resourcing versus actually being creative and doing some really, really stellar marketing. Look at it as the sort of impact it has with their relationship with customers too, and you find some really interesting takeaways there. So our mission, we're going to create meaningful relationships with our alumni, with students we want to attract to our organizations, but we're also going to really work hard to prevent a broken marketing experience from causing a broken audience relationship. Like, don't let this sort of silos and, broad segmentation affect how you build this relationship with your audiences. So, in summary, look introspectively, experience what your audience experiences. Like, you have to walk in their shoes and feel what they feel. And with the right mindset, the roadblocks actually will become very clear to you. So start removing them and watch what unfolds next. There's, these are the 4 things I went through. Eliminating your data silos, segment dynamically, get really creative and individual with this. Individualize the experience. It's not enough to say hi, Steph. And free your marketers. I could do a whole campaign on free your marketers. I like the ring to that. So, talk to them about which touch points are creating really insightful data and go from there. So I hope those 4 things have been helpful to you. I hope you can make some steps forward on each of them. If you want to learn more from other people who are actually doing what I'm sort of advocating here in this talk, we're running an event in San Francisco for those of you who can make it. We would love you to come and join the community, and we've got some fantastic speakers from across all sorts of industries, and actually Creative Live, I believe, will definitely be there. So this is a sort of prompt. Go to activate.iterable.com and check it out. And we're building more speakers and things as we go. And now I'd be really happy to take some questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for really a fascinating presentation and discussion. And we do have some questions. And if anyone in the audience still wants, we've still got something like 25 minutes left. So if you have a question that you want to ask Stephanie, just you still have plenty of time. Use that Q&A console, type it in, and hit the submit button, and we'll get to as many as we can. But Stephanie, why don't we start going through the ones that have arrived from the audience? And a couple of times you made reference to data silos that can occur on campus. Can you talk a little bit about the best way to identify those data silos that you mentioned? How does a university go about identifying what those silos are?
Yeah, great question. And the piece of advice I'd give you is follow the customer. So unpick their experiences, and you'll see where you're using data you have and where they're giving you data back, and that will help you track all the different data silos. I think you'll find that if you find 16, I bet you find more than 16 if you look at every interaction you have. But my advice for that is follow the customer. So unpick their journey and figure out where that data comes from you to them, and vice versa, back from them to you. I think as well, look across teams and the tools they use, obviously. Do you have access to their data? So in some people I talk to, they have an email team and they have a mobile team, and neither have access to each other's data. So when they sort of move to a system like Iterable, where it's sort of one view of the customer, they all of a sudden have access to, oh, no wonder they didn't reply to my email, but look how active they've been on mobile, or look how active they are in the app when, they haven't been at all active on email. So just, look around and look what tools your colleagues are using. I think Forbes mentioned, I said earlier, that the average company uses 16. It's safe to say that that's not going to change. So as some sort of process, as your departments add technology, one of the requirements for, adding and purchasing new technology has to be what happens to the data. And the other thing is you might find, I think a lot of companies and places we look at, as people have moved, they have a legacy system. It doesn't do what they need to do to remain or be competitive. Therefore, they add a point solution. And actually what that does is makes the problem worse than if you just stuck with the legacy. So stay away from those sort of point solutions that will just do one of these channels, because you're creating another silo. So they're the bits of advice I would give you. I think it's okay to eliminate a tool or two if they're these point solutions, just to drive for this data silo, busting them down.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Moving on to another question that came in, and you did make reference to sort of the legacy systems that many schools are using. We have a question from someone who's at a smaller university and said, that making such a large change, kind of marketing that you're talking about, seems like a significant overhaul for them. So, and do you have some advice for them on how you would recommend getting started in going in a new direction like this?
Yeah, I think with anything, these sort of, what's the expression, you eat the elephant one bite at a time. I think just the thing is keep taking steps forward. And what I just said in the last question, when you're looking at new channels, figure out how not to make another data silo. I also think you should do some sort of decent calculations on the ROI. So if they look back in this presentation, you can see, take some of the numbers, take some of the sort of increases people see what you could assume if you made it personalized, and start to look at the ROI. And at the end of the day, you have to keep moving forward. So look at the ROI. I think it seems like a massive change, but actually it's a necessary change in a lot of cases, because you will be so easily dismissed. In this sort of really competitive realm, if you don't have a mobile app, that's what Gen Z wants. That's where they're engaging with. So I'm afraid it's just sort of walk a mile in the shoes of the people you're actually trying to sell to. And I think you'll find pretty quickly that you have to keep moving forward, especially when this, all this disruption is happening.
Okay. Well, you just touched on mobile offering, and could you talk a little bit more about the mobile offering? For, let's say, a school does not yet have that side of the marketing piece in place. What kind of advice can you give them about getting into the mobile side of this?
Get a move on. The writing's on the wall. There is no. Obviously depending on the school, but really for if you're trying to interact with these Gen Z students, you have no choice. It's now an imperative. So if you're not doing it, figure out how to do it, because you need to get moving down that track. From an ROI perspective, you can easily look at that, but do some research and think very carefully about the risk of not doing it, because I think the train kind of left the station and you need to run after it very quickly.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move over now to come back to the silo issue, and we have a very good question that came in from the audience who writes. He says, one of your suggestions was to eliminate data silos, but most organizations usually have these silos because they've not found a one-size-fits-all technology solution for all the team's needs. But even then, attempting to combine those data into a single source is often very difficult and expensive and never fully resolves the solution in large universities. What suggestions do you have to overcome those challenges?
Again, I think, one step at a time, identify the silos, and then look for the modern marketing platforms where a lot of the platforms out there, like Iterable and others, will solve a lot of these problems for you. I think the legacy systems where your data is locked in, where it's, not accessible, where it's SQL queries, it's not real time, you're going to be locked in. But take a look at the modern marketing solutions that are out there that aren't as onerous as you would once think. I think years ago, 18 months for an implementation was like, well, that's just the pain of doing business. It's not like that anymore. So definitely one of the strong points about these modern marketing platforms is how we manage data and how we manage data at scale. So I think it's get educated on the sort of new systems that are out there, and there's a ton of work going on to sort of look at Segment, look at how we use Segment, for example, with a ton of customers to deal with this issue. There's some good modern technology that actually ultimately will save you a ton of hidden cost to start moving these data silos. So just get educated on the sort of modern technology that's out there these days.
Okay. All right. Terrific. I have a question that came in from Andy, who is on the alumni side of things, and he would like you to expound a little bit more on the show me, you know me concept that you discussed. And he wants to know, what does that look like practically for alumni marketing?
So I think, again, depending on what data you have, Andy, it looks like every email that you send out, every notification, every push, every Facebook interaction should be individualized. So you can imagine, I used a couple of examples of, thank me for my last donation on this date, reference the year I was there, reference, do you know if I went to the football game or not? Just making it really personal, that you understand and that you know me. And I think based on sort of demographic data, my name, where I live, all of that good stuff, but also on behavioral data. And I think, again, what these modern marketing systems allow you to do is consolidate so much of the behavioral data that really makes it meaningful. So I don't know how much of that sort of behavioral data you collect, but that, I think, is really a sort of source of tons of personalized outreach at the top of the workflow, and then all the way down. If I respond to an email's probably my medium of choice. If you send me a text, if you send me DM, just sort of start to build this sort of digital body language, digital footprint of the people you're marketing to. That's what I would say.
Okay. All right. Terrific. I would stay with some question that relates to the alumni side of things. And someone writes, as a marketer in the education field, how do you know which channels perform the best for reaching alumni? Is that something that you can track? How do you do that?
This is a really interesting one. And I think in every industry, I think this applies to. I don't think there's a set of written rules. So I think it's about testing. I think it's about experimenting. And I think it's about figuring out what works for you. I know I spend a lot of time on sort of marketing attribution and that type of thing. But you've likely observed different trends based on your current reporting. Hopefully you have some pretty good analytics to show what's working. But across different universities, different online campuses, etc., I think it's different. I don't think there's a set of written rules. But I do know that when you talk to the team at a company, like Creative Live or To You, like how personalized they make their outreach and how responsive they are to what their audience is telling them, that they see an increase across the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Turn to the next question. And it comes from someone who said that they're using an older system to send emails and that they're looking for the best way to reach students who are interested in the university. And the question is it easy to set up an email nurture campaign?
Yeah, so I'm going to be tough on the legacy systems again. The legacy, they're like old cars. You get attached, you give them a name, but actually they're costing you a fortune to keep on the road. So at some point, you need to pull the plug and upgrade your technology. And I know there's all sorts of sort of cost constraints, but there's a lot of research being done now, and again, Forrester's a great source of it, just to show you the hidden costs of those legacy marketing systems and the engineering time and all of that. So in some legacy systems, it is very difficult and very expensive to build a good nurture program. And, without engineering resources, which feels kind of frightening, really. But really start to take a look at what that legacy system's costing you. And B, in a modern marketing platform, it is beautifully easy and intuitive and drag and drop to set up a really robust nurture campaign. I'll plug Etrable. It's what we do really well. It's what some other platforms like us also do really well. You should check out the demo just to see. I think it's live-demo on our website, but just to see how dragging and dropping different channels, different outcomes, wait periods, and people are building some really sophisticated email nurtures, and they have a huge impact across industries. But in these modern systems, this is what they do really, really well. Beautiful workflows and fantastic segmentation, I think, and all in real time, which I think is the third advantage over the legacy systems that they're just not able to do. They're just not built that way.
Okay. All right. Well, you just mentioned some places that are doing some really fantastic things, really robust programs. Can you talk a little bit about which online learning sites and universities you feel are going above and beyond?
I think one we've studied, Udacity does a great job. If you sign up for some of their, emails, super strong presence at the start of the engagement. They send you a really good welcome series. We did a whole study on welcome series, as you'd be surprised how few people send them. They push you then towards their mobile app. They really know where their strengths lie, and they enhance the experience by flexing those muscles. So I would suggest you sign up, check it out how they do it. They've shown a real understanding of their demographics and their users' habits and preferences. Their app is really slick. They have interactive videos even. They have messaging. And overall, it's a really, really good experience. So I would hold them pretty high in the sort of example of engaging. While we were testing it, they kept us engaged. They were attentive, and we kept going back. So check them out, Udacity.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And we have a question that came in from Mark, who a fairly broad question. It simply, could you shed light on inbound marketing? Can you talk a little bit about the inbound side of this?
In education specifically, is that? I guess.
I think so, yes.
Can we be a bit more specific on the question? I think I could go on forever about inbound marketing. But
well, Mark, if you're still with us, if you could repost your question with a little more detail, that would be great. We'll come back to it if you like.
Thank you. I just want to answer
would probably
properly.
be the Okay. And a question which I've been thinking about, and listening to you talk about wanting to get, to personalize, is this question of, and as you go omni-channel and it's all relevant, is this question of gauging frequency of touch. As more and more people are attempting similar programs, obviously people's variety of devices are lighting up with these kinds of, whether it's emails, outreaches in posts and so on. Do you have advice on when is too much, and how does a university gauge that?
Yeah, and again, this is a plug for the modern marketing technology, like machine learning, artificial intelligence. Actually, for all the hype and puff about what that means, this is an area where really they're doing a good job with send time optimization and gauging when's too much. So, again, I hate to keep saying it, but, that's one of the things that technology can really help you with. So you don't have to assume that someone doesn't want to receive something every 7 days, because that's the sort of tribal knowledge we've all grown up with. Like, let the machine learning help you there. And that's one of the things, actually, we'll be really digging into a ton at Activate, the event I talked to you about. So look out for content from that if you can't make it, where, the machine learning and the algorithms and the experiences across all, email will inform those algorithms. So I think that's one of the things. We can sort of go with tribal wisdom. We can look at how we would like to receive email or receive push or and walk in our customers' shoes, our audience shoes, and we can hope and look forward to when our systems have technology in place that will really, really let us do that. So when you're evaluating, definitely sort of ask that question, because I think that's one of the really, really good use cases for machine learning.
Okay. All right, terrific. Thank you. And we did actually hear back from Mark again with a little clarification about his initial question. And what he wants to hear, he did say he is specifically talking about higher ed, and he wanted to hear a little bit more about using website social media for marketing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think it doesn't differ from any other brand you're trying to build a meaningful relationship with. So actually, I'll tell you a story that happened to me the other day, and it wasn't education related, but it was kind of informing about when this goes right and when it goes wrong, using social media as part of your omni-channel strategy. So I was buying some socks, and there's a very great brand of socks who give one pair for every pair you buy. And I like this company very much. So I filled my basket, and then I got distracted, and I did something else. And I went to Facebook, and there was a beautiful ad from said sock company giving me 20% off. It didn't say anything about first customer only. It gave me a code, and nice and personalized. Well, not personalized, but nice and sort of, I thought, God, this is really good omni-channel marketing. So I put my code in, all full of the joys of spring, about to get 20% off my lovely socks, added a few more pairs to make up for the deficit. And there was a sort of rude alert on the website that then said, code unaccepted, you're already a customer. It was not thought through, and it was written by probably whoever had been building the site at the time, not customer friendly at all. So I sort of went from this high about their brand, about how I was buying more, to this sort of real low when it was like, I'm a customer and they're treating me like, wow, but they just put that in my Facebook feed. And I didn't buy them. And I actually sent them a note, because this is the world I live in every day, and said this was my experience. And in a real, like, walking in the customer's shoes experience across the web, great, lovely shopping experience, horrible error message or, decline from the code. Fantastic Facebook experience. Wow, how relevant. I was just shopping there a minute ago, but they gave me a code I couldn't use. And actually, it's the same email address. I'm a customer. They have my unique identifier. They know exactly who I am, and they were targeting me wrongly on Facebook and then gave me a terrible web experience. So I can't entirely apply that to education for you, because it's been a little while since I've been educated. But you see my point from sort of walking in your customer's shoes. And that experience really, the support person sent me a great note back, and it's all great, and I still love the socks. So they had a real opportunity to lose me, and I would be telling you a horrible story about my lovely sock company instead of telling you that actually they fixed it, but only because I reached out. And if I hadn't, I would have been one of that 94%. So, just the importance of that cross-channel experience. You can really mess it up, or you can make it a fantastic experience. And I think thinking through, again, that whole customer interaction, and don't think of it as a webhook and a this and a segmentation and an if that and an all that, and just think of it from how your customers, how your audience are going to experience it. So it's not a totally relevant example, but you can see the point I'm trying to make.
I'm delighted that you got your socks, but that is all the time that we have left today. So we're going to wrap up the questions at that point. If any of you did ask a question that we didn't get to, someone from the Iterable team will follow up with you directly to get you some answers. And as we leave, I just put back this slide showing this conference that Stephanie referenced before. And I think it would help anyone who wants to learn more about this. That conference would probably be a great way to go. So as we wrap up, I want to thank Stephanie Robotham again for really an excellent presentation. I'd also like to thank Iterable for its support again today. And one final reminder, we will send out an email to everyone who attended when the recording of the webinar is ready. So thank you all for attending, and this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.